Thank you, Jess from Circadian Kids, for jumping on with me today. Since following you, I've learned so much about how to look after my family when it comes to artificial light and flicker lights and sleeps and the sunrise and sunsets and all things in between. I can't wait to get as much information out of you as possible today because I feel like you're a wealth of knowledge in quite a few different areas. In the short time I've been following you, I've learned heaps. So I'm so excited to have you on. So, what led you to Circadian Kids?
Oh, thank you for having me, firstly. And thank you for following my work. You know, when it's so funny, right? Because when you go through these experiences in life, you don't actually expect or have any expectation you're going to share it. You know, you go through the experience, and then all of a sudden people start asking you, like, oh, what are you doing? Like, what is that? What do you mean, like, it's good to go see the sunrise? And what do you mean you don't use artificial lights at night? You know, like, what are you doing? Like, this sounds really weird and bizarre. And so it was like, I just decided to start sharing it and just see what happens. So I guess, where does the story begin? Okay, so 5 years ago, close to 5 years ago anyway, I was like in a bit of a like real kind of dark, dull time in my life. There's experiences and things that led up to this, but my kids were at that time aged 2 and 4, and I actually, no, they weren't. They were 1 and 3, and they just didn't sleep like well. You know, like they would sleep okay, but they were waking up anywhere between 4 and 5 times a night, which is not good for a mother's nervous system, right? And I just thought, there's surely like other people around me, their kids are sleeping. Like, there's got to be another way. And intuitively, I just felt like it was something else. It wasn't that I didn't have them in this strict routine and blah, blah, blah. Oh, actually, I injured my left knee first. So it was like this chain of events. You know, it's like when your intuition is really like calling you for something and you don't listen, it will send you a really big sign. And so I ended up injuring my left knee quite badly, and I had to go in for surgery quite quickly. I had a full meniscus repair, almost a meniscus removal or like transplant, and managed to repair it. And I ended up in this like full leg cast for 6 weeks. And, you know, I had a 1 and a 3-year-old. My 1-year-old obviously still breastfeeding. And I just remember looking at my husband. I was about 4 days out from the operation, and I just said, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like, this, I'm done. You know, like, something needs to change here because I feel like I'm like pushing shit uphill and nothing feels aligned and nothing feels good in my life. And I just had this drop in, or this like intuitive download that we needed to travel Australia. And my husband was like, you're crazy. Like, how, we can't do that. Mike, he was a week on, week off roster, I think, at that time. Um, and I said, just put it to your boss and see whether you can change to the other roster, which was 2 weeks on, 4 weeks off, or 2 weeks on, 3 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 4 weeks off, something like that. And he goes, look, I'll try, but I can't guarantee anything. And then literally the next week, he was like, they've said yes. I was like, good. Within
Right.
6 weeks, we were on the road traveling Australia. And within like the first week, I noticed the kids started sleeping better. And I didn't put two and two together at that time, right? But pre going to the Australia trip, this is how tired and exhausted I was. I would, before I went to bed, and I was up to 1 o'clock in the morning eating ice cream and chocolate and binging on Netflix. And I would set up the TV on ABC Kids. I would put the remote on the coffee table and I'd leave 2 bananas there. And the kids were literally programmed to wake up in the morning, and it might be like 5 a.m. or something, and go straight to the TV, put the TV on, and eat their banana before the sun was even up. And that was my coping mechanism. And then when we started traveling Australia, we didn't have the TV. The kids were waking up and going outside straight away. And I was like, oh, I started to feel better in my nervous system. I started to feel more regulated as a mother. And then it wasn't until actually a month into the trip we fell pregnant with our third baby.
Wow.
Yep. And then so obviously things got better.
We're sleeping well.
Yeah, sleeping better. Anyway, we got to Tassie, and that must have been about, I think, probably 3 months into the trip. And I just was like led to this podcast. I had to pick my husband up from the airport because he was doing the FIFO thing to where we were living. And I had to pick him up, and I had like a 45-minute drive. My mum was in the car with me actually. And there was this one particular podcast I love listening to. I don't know if you know Cynthia O'Meara.
No.
Oh, she is amazing. I followed her for years and years. And I looked at the latest podcast, and it was something that I did not resonate with. It was like light, water, and magnetism, and it was by Dr. Jack Cruz. And in brackets, it said explicit language. Now, that title of that podcast did not capture me. I was just like, nah, like, sounds boring. But that caption of explicit language, I was like, ooh, this sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So we jumped in the car, and it was the kids' nap time. So they'd fallen asleep, and we popped it on. And oh my goddess, within like 5 minutes, I was hooked. I was like, whoa, like this, I'd never heard this information. I mean, I studied naturopathy, nutrition, and herbal medicine. And that was I finished in 2015. And I had never heard about circadian rhythms. We did not learn about that in naturopathic college. And so when he started speaking about this, it was like this full body remembering of how we once lived.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, we've been doing it like all wrong. Like, what are we doing as a human race living the way that we are living, so disconnected from the earth? And I tell you what, I was 35 then, so I'm 40 this year, so nearly 5 years ago. And I had never intentionally got up to watch a morning sunrise in my entire life. And I say intentionally because I saw many sunrises.
Partying back in the day.
Yes, in my late teens, in my early 20s, like coming out the nightclub, never intentional. And so I listened to this podcast. I think it was like an hour and a half long. We can actually link the podcast below if you like.
Yeah.
And that was the start of my journey. I was 20 weeks pregnant by then with my third baby. And I set my alarm. We were in the Tassie mountains. I set my alarm for like 5:45 a.m., got up and witnessed my very first sunrise. And funny thing is, I was so disconnected from the earth and from the sun that I walked outside and I didn't even know which way was east, where the sun came up. Like, I was so disconnected from it. And I just thought, this is actually embarrassing and hilarious because we were in the mountains, so we couldn't see the sun until about 8 a.m. But I got my bare feet on the ground, on the earth, and I exposed my eyes, I call like your solar panels, your eyes and your skin. I exposed them to the natural morning light, and I have been hooked like ever since. It has changed my life, and we can go into more detail like why it's changed my life, but it's changed my kids' lives as well. You know, from going from not sleeping to then just being the most amazing sleepers, and all we did was help to sync their circadian rhythm, and it's not hard to do. A few little tweaks here and there and connecting back to the outside world.
Wow, what a journey. Because ever since I've been listening and watching you too, I've been like, oh my goodness, this all makes so much sense. And it's kind of like one of those like, oh my God, we're so silly. We are, like, as a society, we are so disconnected from nature. And something as little as the sun. Learning the sun's healing benefits is where I'm at right now in my whole life. Just on the skin and sunscreens and stuff. That's really where I'm at navigating. and it is incredible. But I'm witnessing even myself talk about it with family and stuff, and it's like, yeah, but it's still dangerous, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna I'll just go back to talking about it with people I've met on the internet because they get it. Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow. So when did you start then diving deeper in, because you're so knowledgeable on it? How did you learn more, like, to then teach families?
I think when you have that light bulb moment, it's a knowing. It's like
Mm.
I just knew that I had to keep going. It almost became like an obsession.
Mm.
It was like, wow. So I'm 35 and I was never taught this. And then you kind of start to unravel your whole life and how everything has been connected to this disconnection that we've had and I've had from the earth. So if I look at like my childhood, right? I suffered with chronic asthma, eczema, and allergies. And that was from the age of about 18 months to 2 years of age. And I remember my parents doing everything. Now, back then, in 1989, there was no internet. There was like encyclopedias, and you would get like leaflet drops in your pet post box, with at your front door with some information of something that might be happening in the town. But there was no internet to just be like, 2 seconds, know the answer, right? Like we know today. And I remember my mom just like trying everything because she's always been like more of the alternative mind. And we did so many things like homeopathy, we did skin prick tests, we did everything. And the one thing that really helped me was every morning before school, my parents would take me, I've got 3 siblings, to take the 4 of us down to the beach, actually down at Hall's Head, where we still go today when we go back home. I don't live there anymore. And we would go down to the beach, and I would, like, my eczema was chronic. It was awful. I would never wish that upon any child. And I would get into the water and it would sting like hell. It would just be awful. But I just felt good. Like I felt like, this could be the answer. And so every morning before school, they'd take us down there. We'd go for a swim, get in the ocean. We would like soak our bodies in those beautiful electrons in the earth, bare feet on the earth. And we'd go have a shower, put our clothes on, and then they'd drop us at school. And that was in the morning, right?
Yeah,
That
wow.
was like before school. So that was
Poor
around the
kids.
time. Yeah.
I'm a mum of like 2 kids. Like when I hear just a story like that, which before you become a parent, you're like, oh, okay, cool, that's just a beautiful story. Now you're like, a
Yeah.
mum and dad dragging 4 kids to the beach before
Yeah.
school. Oh, how's it going to be with them? How's the nervous system?
Oh yeah, and I think, but the thing is, going to work, getting outside in the morning, or any time of the day, it's actually so much easier to parent in the outside world, I'll tell you. And so taking us kids, that like getting outside in the morning, it helps to boost serotonin, and that there's like a bit of a chain that will help to then produce melatonin. So that beautiful first morning light is, it's registered through the eyes and the skin, and it's sending a message to our brains that it's morning, we're setting up our circadian rhythm for the morning. And when we have a beautifully synced circadian rhythm and we sleep well at night, that is when our body has the opportunity to really heal. And so there was this beautiful cycle that was happening with my eczema. It was like I was getting the morning light, I was getting my skin into the ocean, I was getting my bare feet on the ground before school, and my sleep was getting much better at nighttime. So my body was naturally having more of an opportunity to actually heal. Now, my parents didn't know anything about artificial light, and I was petrified of the dark as a kid. And I slept most of my childhood with a bedside lamp on every night, all night. And unfortunately, like as we know now with artificial light, that is triggering the brain, sending a message that it's daytime. So I'm trying to sleep at nighttime. I've set myself up during the morning. I've gotten the morning light, so my body's in rhythm. But come nighttime, I've still got this blaring lamp in my eyes because I'm petrified of the dark. And then when I got a little bit older, the lamp got turned off, but I always had like the bathroom light on, it would
Very
always come
critical.
straight
Yeah.
into my bedroom and it would shine straight on my face. And that is just my childhood. That's what I remember. But I always say we only know what we know and we can only do better when we know better, right? So that is like the beginning. And that, you know, we as children, it's generally what I have understood, what I've researched, but also what I've understood with my own kids. That first 6 years or so is really the foundation that sets up a child for their entire life. And so my first 6 years where I really suffered these chronic conditions, it really, that pattern really kind of like weaved throughout my whole life, because when I got my first bleed, it was like the worst thing in the world. And then I had chronic cramps. I had like an ovarian cyst the size of a grapefruit that burst. I would have to take the first 3 days off school for when I had my first period each month. And then when I went into the workplace, the same thing. I couldn't work. I would be in debilitating cramps. Then went through the process of PCOS, all the things. And then when I got to 27, I was diagnosed with infertility. And so when I like look back on this, like I believe everything is divine. I don't believe there is a mistake. I think there is a lesson. It's always a lesson, and it's always a learning, and it's a soul like growth and transformation. And so everything that has happened in my life has got me to this point now, where now I can share from a place of really like experiencing, embodying, and integrating all of these things that I've learned, especially in the last 5 years, to now share from a place of, you know, resonance and story. And so I like, when I started watching the morning sunrise, I then like went into an incredible spiritual awakening. And that was about 4.5 years ago, about 6 months of watching the sunrise. And this is all perfect, because if you think about this, right, and this is staring directly into the morning light. So just before the sun comes up and about sort of 10 to 15 degrees of the sun coming up over the horizon, actually looking into the sun. And I definitely do not advocate for looking into the sun once it has UV in it. That is dangerous for the eyes and the retina.
And when does that happen? When does the UV go into the sun?
It depends where you are in your location, but you can simply look up on like any of the apps like Willy Weather or bomb.gov, whatever it might be, and you can see. So it changes in seasons, right?
Right.
So you can check it. I think for ours it's about 45 minutes to about 45 minutes once the sun comes up, but that depends on what time of the year. So don't take my word for that.
Okay.
It's 45 minutes, because it depends where you live in the world, your location, and the season that you're in. But prior to UV, it's actually very powerful for the body, because if you think about it, right, we are essentially energy. Light is energy. We are actually light beings. Our biology is governed by light. Without light, we cannot thrive. And that is without the right light. I'm not talking about living under artificial light, because we can still live, but our bodies will not thrive. Our bodies can only thrive, and we're talking about all humans. You know, we're talking about children, especially. I talk about children a lot, but also mothers, like all humans, right? We thrive when we are in the outside world. That is how we were meant to live, always in the outside world. But today we have built these concrete or brick bunkers where we have blocked out the sun. And instead, we have these artificial suns all over our roofs that are emitting the wrong kind of light that helps our brains and bodies to function and to thrive. It's got a frequency of an artificial blue light. It's not the same blue light that comes from the sun, and it's also missing all those other essential colors that come from the sun. The sun emits pretty much every color of the rainbow at different times of the day, right? Whereas a light in your house, an artificial light, only emits blue light. And that's sending a different kind of signal to the brain and the body when you are exposed to that, like at long periods of time, which a lot of humans are these days. So I went a little bit off track there.
No, this is amazing. I'm like mind blown. It's kind of all common sense, right? But really not common sense, I guess, in our society. Yeah, like you said, like everything just resonates and hits when you listen to that podcast. This is how I feel like, and I listen to it, I'm just like, yeah, this really hits. And then you think about schools and kids have been put in school from so young, and they're in these then there are these walls and these blue lights. That's what I'm just picturing while you're speaking. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yes, and that is a big thing, right? And people are sometimes a little bit shocked when they hear that my kids actually go to school. My kids go to school 2 streets from where we live. We very intentionally moved into this house because I wanted to make sure that the kids could ride to school. So every morning they are exposed to the right light. They move their bodies, they get their feet on the earth. Then they go to school, and where we live, they actually finish at 2:30 in the afternoon, which is great because we have about 5 hours of natural light. And so many people have said to me, like, why don't you take this message into schools, Jess? And I will eventually. But the thing is, most people aren't doing what is need to be done at home first, right?
Yes. And this is where it comes back all the time, right?
Yes. And this goes for all people that have children, because you say you might be homeschooling, but are you getting your child outside, or are they sitting on an iPad all day, or are they, it doesn't matter where and what your child is doing and how you decide to parent and what choices that you make. Is it though, how can we do the best that we can do while they are with us at home? So we do what we can do in the morning. We ride them to school. We pick them up. We're always walking to school. We pick them up. They ride home. We come home. We make a smoothie, and they're outside. We have a pool. Again, very intentionally have a pool up here because where we live, it's like 41 degrees today, for example. And we are outside. So we have like a no ban for like no TV during the week, Monday to Friday, because I know that the kids are now, they're in year 2 and year 4, they are starting to get screen time at school, which I am not happy about, but we can only do what we can do, right? And what the most important thing is to do before school and after school. And so after school, I love that they finish at 2:30, and because they're only 2 minutes away. So we come home and then we spend, 5 hours outside playing, or they might be building Lego. My kids are still very creative. They have wild imaginations, and they still love playing. So I feel that when a kid is really connected to the earth, and they honor the outside world and the sun, their imaginations and their creativity and the way that they play is incredible. And they don't feel as drawn to, turn the TV on, or, constantly ask for, we don't actually have that much technology, to be honest. We have the TV. We don't have any video games. We don't have any iPads. My husband and I have a mobile phone each, and I have my laptop. And that's pretty much it. Our kids have never had iPads. We don't do smartwatches, all those sorts of things. And this is all very intentional living. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, wow. There's so many things that has come up for me in terms of what to ask you. And so many things you've being brought up holistically. I'm like, what does that even mean? But also then, what just came up for me just then is I love the fact that you can identify that everything's just got to be in balance, right? Like you chose to put your kids in school, because I think right now, especially in my community of women, everyone's been like, do I homeschool? Do I put my kids in school? And there's so much fear about what's going to happen to our kids being put in school. But at the end of the day, what happens at home is the foundation of a child's life. And and attachment. I'm really learning a lot about attachment. I just went to Gabor Mate's thing the other day and learning about
Mm,
that. Like if you don't want your kids to grow another attachment with, a a peer based attachment, if that's what it's called, I can't remember now. But it's like, well, if you focus on your attachment with your kids at home, that will always be the foundation, whatever happens at home. And again,
yeah,
like, again, I'm navigating all of the new things now, being a mother of a 2-year-old. So she's about to turn 3. Even around food, like, do I let her eat the lolly at the party? But it's like, well, yeah, like, if whatever you're doing at home is your foundation, whatever happens outside of home that you can't control, whatever, let it go. But whatever
yeah,
happens at home is the foundation, and it will always come back to it if that's your main focus at home. If there's beautiful food at home, if there's beautiful boundaries and outside time and at home, then you can only control with that, can't you? Because that's the biggest thing as that
yes.
mother, is navigating all the firsts and the big decisions. So I can identify what's a huge decision, and the whole school system and the lights and the building and the that goes through your mind.
There's a lot of things, right? But like you said, it's fear that creates all of this unnecessary thoughts and all unnecessary experiences. Like, I used to come from a place of fear, like
Mm.
constantly, and it used to rule my life. And now I come from a place of making conscious decisions, intentions, and like, you can choose whatever you want. Like, we have the freedom to choose whatever we want. We're very lucky to live in Australia. If we want to homeschool our kids, we can homeschool our kids. If we want to send them to school, if we want a boarding school, we can do whatever we want, right? But it's good. I always say, do it with a conscious making decision, not unconscious. So it's like, oh, they're doing it, I have to do it as well. Well, actually, you can make your own choice there. Like, I don't particularly love the school system, no, but I still want my kids to have an education. And the school they go to, they have loving, nurturing teachers. They don't have a no homework policy, a no homework policy, which we wouldn't be doing homework anyway if it came home. There's things I like about it, but there's also things that I'm just like, ugh.
Mm.
But I don't let that take over my thoughts and feelings in a negative way. I do what I can do with the foundations, a solid foundation at home, and that's all we can do, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, cool. So how can a parent at home, if they're listening, identify? So say if their kid's sleeping not very good, what's the first thing you would say to look into to potentially changing?
Mm. Okay, I would start with blue light.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
what blue light?
So this is the thing, right? We, as this human evolution has gone on, the modern world that we live in, we think that we have to have all this tech, all these gadgets, all the best Bluetooth, baby monitors, like all these things, right? I intuitively, before I knew any of this, intuitively, that felt yucky to me. It didn't feel in alignment. And I was like, why do I need a baby monitor? I don't get that. And I've never ever had a baby monitor. I've
Neither
just
have I.
never, no, I've just never felt like the pull to like invest in any of these gadgets.
Mm.
And so I know that you did this, Ev. This is really cool. Like, it's so simple, right? Grab your phone, put it on slow mo on your video, and check around your house what is pulsating a blue light that is flickering that you can't see with the human eye, and have a look around your house that is potentially causing a disruption to your family's circadian rhythm. And you could do that right now. Like, that is one thing that you can do right now. It doesn't cost you anything. Just grab your phone, put it on slow mo, turn all your lights on, and see which ones flicker. Then turn them off. Don't use them. Go
It
out.
becomes
If
it becomes
if you,
addictive, doesn't it?
yeah.
I walked through the forum once I discovered all this, and I walked through the forum because I used to be a hairdresser. So I used to work at
Yeah.
Silent Express in a shopping centre. So I was like, how many years have I been exposed to this lighting? Once you start learning about how
Mm,
damaging it is, and I walked through, and I'm thinking about all these poor people, like have no idea, have like, and who probably sleep like shit most nights, right? And they're probably
Mm,
then going to the doctor, there's no reason for it, and here's a drug, and here's this, let's fix it, and
yeah,
that's
the
Band-Aid this, that.
cascade.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm videoing through the shopping center, and all the lights, it feels like you're in a strobe light. Like,
Yes.
it's wild.
Yeah.
Wild. And then
Yes.
obviously my even my daughter's red light that I had for her, it was like one of those dream sleep. It wasn't dream sleep the brand, but it was like the dream sleep, the thing that's up side of bed. And she had that from the get-go, and that was flickering, one of the
Yeah.
worst. And it
Yeah.
was like straight in the
Yeah.
bin.
Yeah, well, same. When Louis, he's nearly 10 this year, but when he was 6 months, that first 6 months of him as being new parents was like the worst time of my life because he was born at 34 weeks and like a big shock to have a baby early. And, he was in the neonatal intensive care unit, a lot of like, unnecessary trauma, unnecessary antibiotics, all the things. And also, we didn't get to sleep overnight. So we had to leave our very first baby for 2 weeks in the neonatal ward. We were there for 12 hours during the day and then we didn't see him at nighttime. So we actually had no idea what he was like at nighttime. He slept all day. So we thought, oh, he's a pretty chill baby. And then before you leave the neonatal ward, you do like a mother's in or something, whatever it's called. And it's where there's a room nearby and the mother sleeps with the baby that night. And I remember it being it made me crack. Like I was holding it in for 2 weeks and it pulled me apart. I could not believe this baby screamed all night. And I just thought, holy shit, has this baby been screaming all night for 2 weeks and I didn't even know? Because what they do in the neonatal ward is all they do is just like dim the light slightly. That's it. So you've got these, and when you dim a light, the flicker actually makes it much worse.
Yeah, right.
And it also, the EMF component of it, the electromagnetic field, it also radiates more of that electromagnetic that you don't want as well when you turn the lights down. So it actually flicker more. Obviously, nurses have got to work 24 hours around the clock, right? But these little babies, especially when they're brand new, I mean, obviously the whole other topic of being separated from their mother, which is just wild to
That's what's
me.
coming up for me right now.
Oh, wild to me
It
that
should
could
be,
even be a thing.
no, it should not be a thing.
Nah,
That's
nah,
where the healing comes from. Mother and baby together is prime healing for
yes,
before
it's a whole
any.
experience being in the neonatal ward, I tell you. A
Yeah,
whole
I can resonate.
experience.
And thinking about
And
just
yeah,
thinking
go.
about all the EMF in that room as well, like when you think about the
Mm,
cords and the machines and what they're
yeah,
exposed to. There's no sunlight. There's no open
no,
windows. There's
no,
no there and there's no mum. So I can
yeah.
understand why he screamed all night.
Yes, yeah, and
Just
so they
something.
have it's this like it's very, very regimented. It's like you have the baby has to put on at least 200 grams before you can take the baby home. So overnight I'm feeding and I just did not take him off my boob and I didn't sleep one wink. And I walked out of that room the next morning and just about fell over and I was just like, whoa, what is this? And so we took him home. Actually, he didn't put on any weight, so we had to leave him a whole nother night before we could take him home again. So we took him home and we just didn't know what to do with this baby. We were just like, he doesn't sleep. He wakes 12 times a night. He was waking every 40 minutes. He wasn't flipping over into that next sleep cycle. It was like, that next REM. His eyes would go into that flicker stage and he was falling asleep on the boob. So he was falling asleep on the boob and then I would try and take him off and then he'd stay asleep. 40 minutes on the dot, he was awake again. And
It's
that
like
went on
mum
for
don't.
6 months.
It's like that mum don't let me go.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot there. I've done a lot of healing in that situation.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, at 6 months of age, I just said to my husband, that's it. I can't do this. I just handed him the baby and I was like, I don't want to be a mother. This is not for me. I can't do this. And I remember my girlfriend bringing over a book And it was the book, you'll know it. It's called Save Our Sleep by Tizzy Hall. It's the book that everyone is just like, especially all crunchy mothers or mothers that have the door open to alternative therapies, that this book is like the devil.
The devil.
And yeah, and my husband, we read it, and I just said, well, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
There's no other option. And so we did it. And within 4 nights, he was sleeping through. But that 4 nights was hell. It was hell, days and nights. And I can still remember the cries. Like, was just fucking awful. I just swore, sorry. It was just awful. And unfortunately, I would never recommend that book, because unfortunately he still has attachment issues now, and he's nearly 10. And so but when you're in a state of despair and you're in the bottom pit, you will do anything, right? You will do absolutely anything. And the next baby, I just didn't feel like that felt good, and I didn't want to do it again. And so I didn't with my next baby. I still did some kind of sleep training. Training, such a weird word for a baby, isn't it? And then come, my third baby, he's my little circadian kid, and that's where the circadian kid comes from, Circadian Kids. He is just like so in tune with the earth, so in tune with the sun. He was born on sunrise, and all I did, his circadian rhythm was in sync from day one. And if you read the science in the papers, they say that a baby doesn't have a circadian rhythm until like 3 or 4 months down the track. Like, no way. This kid, like, he is my experiment. He knew his days and nights from day one. And that day one, he was born on sunrise that morning. The next morning, he witnessed his first sunrise out of the womb. So every single sunrise from 20 weeks, he was witnessing inside of the womb. So of course he's going to have an amazing sync circadian rhythm, right? The sunrise is what sets up.
Yeah, so you're now traveling Australia.
Yes, this was
yes.
Yeah, so we were traveling Australia. We got to 31 weeks. And I said to my hubby, it was like, we're leaving Tassie. We either go up the coast of up to New South Wales, or we start heading back home. What do we want to do? How do we want to birth our baby? And I just kind of felt the draw to go back. I just felt that no, I think I want to go back home. I feel like I want to make home, when you nest, you want to nest, you want to build your own your nest. And I felt like in the van, it just didn't feel like I could build my nest. Mm-hmm. So I said, no, let's go back home. And so at 31 weeks, we started to make the trip back home, which is, if we did it straight, it'd say 4 days straight. But we did it. This is the funny thing, right? And everything's divine. There's no mistake. As we left Tassie and we started to come into Adelaide, this big cruise ship rocked up. We were standing on the port. We were like, this is really bizarre. There was all of these ambulances rocking up, and they had masks and full suits on. And they're all going towards this cruise ship, and they're bringing all these people off and putting them straight in the ambulance. And we're like, what is going on here? And then we said, because we don't watch the news, and then we jump on and have a look at the news, and we're like, holy shit, this was the beginning of COVID. And we were like, whoa, what is this? Okay. And so all right, I think we need to go home. As we crossed each border home, they closed behind us, literally closed behind us. And we got to Perth, and I wanted to stay with the family for a little bit. Borders were shut state-wise, but they weren't shut, the ridiculous, what did they do? Regions, they shut regions. You remember that?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's such a blur. traumatic
So
time.
my husband had to go back to work, and so we stayed in the caravan for 2 weeks, and it got a week in, and we got word that they were going to shut the regions. And he was on night shift, and I just said, honey, I'm 35 weeks pregnant. If they shut the regions, we're going to be separated. So he had to take his night shift swing off. He flew down, got us in the van, drove back, and the border up to Karatha shut behind us. And so we got back, I was 35 weeks pregnant, made my little nest, and I just kind of zoned out from COVID, to be honest, because I was 35 weeks pregnant and I was just like in my zone of, bringing a new life in. And the thing with watching the morning sunrise, it changes your life because it changes all of your neural pathways, and it starts to create the most amazing, like oxytocin when you're pregnant, serotonin. And so I was having amazing sleeps because I had an abundance of beautiful melatonin. I was happy. Like, this is the thing, right, with COVID, and it closed off all borders. Like, you pretty much couldn't go anywhere. So people started depriving themselves from sunlight and from the outside world. And people started to really just like stay indoors. And it's now shown that during that time, depression rates rose, anxiety, suicide, like all of these things now, autoimmune, things are through the roof because we stayed indoors so much during that time. But whereas I was just outside on my front lawn, on my birth ball, like in the sun all day long. And then, our little circadian kid came right on sunrise. And I just feel so grateful for that time because it was like the universe just had our back, just like completely had our back.
How incredible. So going back, because I think a lot of people who are navigating the sleep training world, there's so much that you said that just resonated with my journey because Ziggy, my first, is an ICU baby, and then was a terrible sleeper, and then so I went into the sleep training, and then now witnessing, and then starting to learn about it, and then trying to unlearn that from her, then see the abandonment issues then surfacing from her, and then the attachment, and then the guilt. So as you were talking to me about that, I was just like, oh, tears are surfacing. We're really navigating that right now in that. That's built in her body. When you start learning about trauma and it gets stored in the body, it's all of it stems back. A lot of it can stem back to childhood, and so it's actually beautiful to hear your story and send myself a bit of compassion that
Yes.
we all know what we know and do the best we can at the time, because not sleeping really sends you wild.
Yeah.
As a parent, it's
Yeah.
really hard. And then the next thing I want that I'm just remembering back to with what you said is you spoke about a banana. Where does the diet come into this?
I love that. Yes. Do you know it's all connected, right? Nothing's separate. We don't we in the medical industry, we have a separate specialist for every part and organ of the body, but it's all connected and it's all governed by light, right? The right light, the sunlight. The sunlight is what sets up our circadian rhythm. And so we actually need to eat food that is in our natural environment to where we live as much as possible. And so, I remember in naturopathic college learning about seasonal eating, local foods, all that sort of thing, but it never really landed. And it only landed since I really dived into circadian rhythms, why it makes so much sense, because different locations around the world have a different, rays of UV, of ultraviolet light, and it's penetrating our food, photosynthesis, it's penetrating our food with a light that is also penetrating our skin. So if I'm growing our own food, that light that is penetrating and that is growing that beautiful organic food that's in my garden is the same light that I am receiving when I'm standing out on the grass, right? And so the body registers that light. And it's like, right, we are in the same environment. We're going to be able to digest this food really well. We're going to be able to metabolize it. And we're going to be able to use the parts that we need for energy, right?
So you're saying that if we go to the shops and because I'm thinking about this right now because I was at
Yeah.
Gilbert's yesterday, and where the oranges were, it said product of the USA. So what you're saying is then because that light is different hitting those trees, growing that food, to our light hitting us, we shouldn't be eating them.
Yeah, I mean that is just one aspect of it,
Okay.
right? So that is a big aspect of it though. It is a completely different light that is penetrating and growing that food to what we and the light that we should be receiving in the location and the environment that we live in. And so that's just one part of it. The second part is the transportation, the way it's been grown, the pesticides, if it's been frozen, has it been irrigated when it comes into the country, so many things, right? But what we do, because we live in Karatha and it's 16 hours away from the major city, we don't have any farms up here. Our closest farms are 6 hours south, which is Carnarvon, which is where Australia gets most of their bananas and mangoes. And then we have Broome, which is 8 hours north, and they have abundance of mango farms there. We can also get like papaya and dragon fruit and tropical fruits, but they are 6 hours south and 8 hours north. But we're still in that same kind of UV light up in the Pilbara, right? Once we go down further south, we start to get a different UV light, and you can feel it. I can feel it in my body. The light that I'm used to up in Karatha, we do not get burnt at all. Like we can be out, and it's 41 degrees today. We can be out in the sun all day and we don't get burnt. And that's because the light in the morning that I'm exposed to is building up. It's the infrared light that helps to build the collagen in the skin. It helps to build up what's called your solar callus. Callus. You can people that are listening can look that up. Solar callus, and that's basically like nature's natural sunscreen. If we have a really good solar callus in our skin, then it's going to protect us from getting burnt. Most people don't have a very good solar callus because they're not getting out in the morning light. They're not getting a little bit of midday light or sunset, and they're exposed to a lot of artificial light. So, but when I go down to Perth, 16 hours south from where I live, it'll take me a long time, but sometimes I can get a little bit red on my skin, and I wouldn't call it burn. The cells start, come up to the surface, and that's just the natural way of how the body protects itself. The next day we're okay, but if I was to stay out 6 hours in the sun down in Perth, I would get burnt. But if I have 6 hours in the sun up here in the Pilbara, I don't get burned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're saying basically if we expose ourselves to the sun in that specific UV in the mornings, we are going to provide our own sun protection throughout the day. So it's kind of like to me weightlifting, right? So you wouldn't go straight into CrossFit and go and deadlift 70 kilos because you're going to hurt yourself. But if you expose yourself to the 5% each time, you're going to get stronger, and therefore your skin's going to act as its own sunscreen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
amazing. It doesn't happen overnight. It's building and building and building, like building blocks, right? Okay. And it's like a tree, a tree doesn't just all of a sudden grow overnight and becomes this big, beautiful tree. It takes time. It builds the foundations first. And that's what's happening within the skin. But the only way to build the solar callus is to witness that morning light. And it doesn't have to be right on sunrise. It's kind of before UV light. So it might be within, half an hour before sunrise or half an hour after sunrise. But exposing as much of your solar panels, your eyes, bare eyes, no glasses. If you wear prescription glasses, just pop them on top of your head just for that exposure in the morning. And then as much as skin as possible.
Right. Okay. So is that just at morning? And what about it at night as well?
Yeah, sunset is great because it's got this beautiful waning light that sends a signal to the body that it's coming into nighttime. There's all different light frequencies within the sun. It's all divine. It's all perfect, right? Like this is how our biology is set up to work with the exact frequencies of that the sun penetrates throughout the day. That is how our circadian sleep wake cycle works, is in partnership with the sun.
What about, so I'm just thinking about my partner, he's from the UK. So, say in winter, I believe he was telling me that the sun sets at like 4 or 5 p.m. and then it doesn't really rise until like, I don't know, 9 a.m. How would that work?
This is like a whole other topic of human
Okay,
evolution,
right.
because we didn't evolve from places like that. The human race from of what is in the history books is that we evolved from the equator around like the East African Rift. That's where humans evolved from. That is what is in the books, in the history books, right? Who knows if that's true? But if you go to the equator, we have a perfect 24-hour cycle, close to 24-hour cycle of 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of nighttime, right? That is how our bodies are set up, to have a perfect amount of daytime and the same amount of nighttime. And so then over time, like, thousands of years, we've moved away from the equator. And a couple of years ago, I remember looking this up and looking at like all, disease, chronic illnesses, autoimmune cancers, and the people that lived the furthest away from the equator had the most of these disease and illnesses. So then you could kind of like, hypothetically speaking, say the further away from the equator, potentially, the worse that your health could be.
Well, because vitamin D rates are meant to be like quite close to nothing in the United States. Sorry, in the United Kingdom. I'm just thinking for when my auntie listens to this, what's a tip you would give to her to how to look after her circadian rhythm in the best way whilst living in the UK where there's not as much sunlight as early and late when you have to get
Yeah,
to work and manage
yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure. And I have clients all over the world. I have clients like in Denmark, in the UK, all over the world, and they're Germany, and they have these exact same questions. And so what we do is I have a couple of different like tools that I send them for, their age, how much sleep they should really like basic, like rough, right? Like nothing's perfect, but roughly how much sleep that they actually need to thrive, depending on their age, right? And then we go and we look at what time does the sun rise and what time does the sun set. Now, if the sun is rising at 9 o'clock in the, or say in the summer, the sun is rising at like something ridiculous, like 3:30 or 4 a.m. in the morning, you're likely not going to get up for it, right? But can we look at getting up at, say, I don't know, 5 o'clock within, say, 2 hours of the sunrise? And then come nighttime, when the sun doesn't go down until like, last light is like 11 o'clock, because some countries have only got around, Antarctica, for example, in the summer doesn't get any any darkness, and then in the winter they don't get any light. But some countries where people have huge populations are only getting between, say, 4 and 6 hours of actual darkness. So what we have to do is we then have to artificially change the lights in our home. And we have to use things like blockout blinds. We have to use things like blue blocking lights, red glasses, all these things, eating at a certain rhythm, like eating outside to register that light, but then coming inside and having a circadian friendly home where our bodies and our nervous systems can naturally wind down and switch off at a reasonable time and not still be awake and out and about and doing things at 11 o'clock at night through the entire summer. And then coming, a couple of weeks later, like people are having these, or months later, these like, what do they call it? The seasonal, depression,
Yeah.
in summer and winter, because summer they're not getting enough sleep at nighttime, and then winter they're not getting enough vitamin D.
Yeah, right. Well, there's a lot to digest. I've seen those lights, those red light therapy lights all over Instagram at the moment. Would you recommend something like that, especially for the healing component?
Yeah, if I lived any more than say 30 degrees south or north, so northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere, 30 degrees from the equator, I would probably get a red light panel.
Okay, and
Yeah.
for any of those who are also thinking, like I am, what does that mean? How can we find out whereabouts we live in terms of away from the equator? That
Yeah, so just you could probably just pop it in Google and pull up a world map, and it'll show and ask for the world map to show latitude, and it will show the equator in the middle, and then it will show the degrees northern hemisphere and the degrees southern hemisphere, and then you'll be able to see how far you are from the equator, and that is a really good representation of what kind of UV that you're going to receive
okay.
throughout the summer and the winter.
Okay, cool. Oh my goodness, so many things are coming up in my mind to ask you because I'm like, oh my goodness, I could literally just pull your knowledge all day. Do you wear sunscreen or sunglasses? And do you think either of them is then damaging to I guess, the healing benefits of the sun?
No, I do not wear them. Sunscreen or sunglasses. I've got these red glasses on my head at the moment. I actually went to grab my orange glasses, but I meant to give these to my girlfriend, my red lens glasses, who's having trouble sleeping at the moment. So I wear my yellow blue block glasses when I'm doing things like podcasts or like on the computer. Otherwise, our entire house is circadian friendly lighting, so we don't have any blue light amongst artificial blue light amongst our house. Now, I wore sunglasses from about age 12 until age 35, and I would wear them on top of my head. And before I'd even walked out the door, I would put them on. It was just like such an unconscious habit. And so when I listened to this podcast by Dr. Jack Cruz, I was like, oh my God, I've been wearing sunglasses since I was 12. And so what that does, you've got like, basically, if you think about say an apple tree, if you put a big tarp over it and it can't see the sun, are you going to be able, is that apple tree going to thrive? Is that apple tree going to be able to produce this beautiful fruit? It's not, because it needs sunlight. And so we are the same. We are no different to that apple tree, right? If we have these shades on in front of our eyes, and our eyes are what registers the light that sends the message to our brain. If we have a block in front of it, then we're not going to receive the right messages, and the brain and body gets confused. It's like, is it daytime? Is it nighttime? And this is, my whole sleep was completely messed up. And so what I did was, from that moment of listening to that podcast, I was like, I've got to ditch the glasses. And so I took them off, but I was squinting so bad. And then when we got back to Karatha, we got back in the summer, 40 degrees outside, UV is like 16 plus. And I was like squinting, my eyes were watering. And it took me a couple of weeks, and I started to witness the morning light, the morning sunrise. I would drive about 10 minutes to go to the place where I could actually see it come up over the horizon. And at first, I could not stare at it. My eyes were so sensitive, incredibly sensitive. And then it took a couple of weeks, and my eyes started to adjust. And now I haven't worn sunglasses in 5 years, and yet I live in one of the hottest parts of Australia and one of the highest UVs in Australia. Same goes with sunscreen. I used to slap that on heaps when I was a kid, like when I
Slap,
was,
slap.
a teenager. And yet we are blocking the rays, the sunlight rays, to be able to synthesize vitamin D. So I ditched the sunscreen. And what the thing is, like with this, depending on your skin type as well, if you all of a sudden stop wearing sunscreen and you haven't been watching the morning sunrise, you've been sitting under artificial light for years, and all of a sudden you go outside,
Yep.
you're going to get burnt.
Yep.
You've got to prep your skin first. And we've been prepping our skin for years, and we do this consistently. And my kids don't wear sunscreen. We occasionally put a little bit of zinc under our eyes and our nose, especially when we go out on the boat. And that's because of reflection burn as well. But again, we just wear hats. And once the kids have been out, I use my intuition a lot, right? We go to the beach, the kids pretty much are naked for like the first maybe 40 minutes in the height of summer. Then I put hats on them, fishing shirts, and then we can still stay another couple of hours, and I put a shade up. Like, it gets to be super simple, right?
So, for anyone listening who's a redhead, my best friend's a redhead, and so she gets burnt by looking at the moon on the TV. What would you say to someone like her, where to begin to ensure that she's no longer burning and she's going to get the sun protection she needs she's going to get the sun's healing abilities that she needs while also looking after her skin?
Yeah, so one of my good friends' daughter is a full redhead too,
Mhm.
and she has the most beautiful brown skin. And that is because she is outside. They live outside a lot. She is always exposing her skin, her eyes. I mean, she's only, what, 8? And like she's a perfect reflection of this. We have this conception, like this idea in our head that has been programmed into us. If you have fair skin, you cannot see the sun, you know? And that is not, I wouldn't say that is correct. It's that we're not doing it the right way. And the right way is to receive that infrared light in the morning and do it consistently. Create a beautiful rhythm where you do get out into the sunlight in the morning, even if it's to like water the gardens at the front, like whatever it might be. Get your kids outside, get yourself outside, and witness that morning light and do that. And then eventually build up. So I say nude at noon. I've been doing this for a couple of years now. Every around noon, I will go outside at the back. I kind of jump in the pool and then I lay naked by the pool. In the summer, I will lay there for maybe like 12 minutes either side. In the winter, I can stay there the entire day. And this is where you get your vitamin D. The higher that sun is in the sky, the more penetration into your skin to get vitamin D. And yet so many people are scared to go out during the middle of the day, but that is the only time that we are going to receive vitamin D, right? And as we know what vitamin D does, it is like one of our life forces.
Yeah, my mum, when I was pregnant with my first Siggy, my mum said to me, because she used to work in indigenous communities, and she said that she had never seen an indigenous woman have breastfeeding issues. I can't remember how the story went, but she remember her saying to me, get your nipples in the sun throughout your pregnancy. Um, and get them as dark as possible. And that's exactly what I did. And I had no nipple trauma, no nipple sensitivities. And I did that again with my second pregnancy, Sage, and same thing. I had a little bit more sensitivity with Sage because she was straight onto the boob and doing 12 hours, but Ziggy being a NICU baby, there was a slower transition to boob. But I constantly know in like that my nipples were black. They were dark. They were very, very dark.
Mm,
I put it back always to that. I'm like, what my mum told me was just
I love that.
didn't having me such a beautiful breastfeeding journey. I didn't have any issues.
I love that.
Yeah, those little words of wisdom.
Mm,
But I remember her saying as well is the women would always be topless.
yeah, yeah,
And
of
that comes
course.
down to as well, and this is going down the breastfeeding route of women saw each other breastfeeding, where as a society, I'm again intuition led. When I had my first, I was never like I'm never going to hide this because I think we should
Mm,
all be seeing this because we've not seen it before. The whole
yeah,
breastfeeding, where it's all been covered up in the I don't know how long it's been, but this is where I've grown up. It's always just been very covered up, and the whole breastfeeding's been a bit more taboo. Like you go into another room, or there's a change room go into where I was like, I'm not buying into this. My breasts aren't here to be sexualized. They're here to feed and nurture my babies and grow my babies.
yes, yes,
Um,
100%.
yeah. So coming back to the indigenous, like they just knew exactly what they were doing, right? Boobs are out.
Mm.
Everyone's witnessing it. Babies are getting passed around, getting what's it called when another mum
Oh,
wet nursing.
wet feeding,
Wet
something like
nursing.
that. Wet nursing, yeah.
Yeah, well, the Gabor Mate spoke about this actually at his seminar he just went to a few weeks ago about indigenous from all over the world are led by intuition, not by society norm. And now he was speaking a lot into we need to listen to intuition. And if someone in society is telling us the do's and the don'ts, we're usually focused on our attachment to that person, about letting that person down or be them people pleaser. Therefore, we let go of the intuition, and that's disconnecting us. So, yeah,
Yes.
that just circled around beautifully. But yeah, it was so beautiful hearing that journey.
Yeah, I love that because I was just looking over at my bookshelf. There's a book that you just reminded me of that we can post in the show notes, but it was basically all about like coming back to indigenous ways, right? Like our ancestral ways. And I'm actually indigenous Australian. My dad, all of his family are indigenous, and we kind of originated from a place called Altunga, which is near Alice Springs. And I've always felt like this kind of knowing, and I didn't really tap into this until I went through my spiritual journey. I was very like just disconnected, like more, the science and, this is just how it is. And
Have you
then,
got research on that?
yeah,
Can you
exactly.
send me the research that you have on that?
Yeah, but I wasn't like, I intuitively felt a knowing, but I wouldn't listen to it. And I would be like, oh God, I've got to find the research on that. Now I'm like, when someone asks me a question, it's like I just connect in with my intuition. I'm like, what feels like that really comes from a place of my heart and a knowing, an inner, innate knowing, as either being a mother or, really tapping into how my ancestors once did it. And it's something that fascinates me so much. And I've recently changed on my profile, my Instagram, basically like young family relearning ancestral ways in a modern world, because if we think back how they lived, it's very different to how we live now. But how can we bring some of those traditions and some of those rituals, how can we bring them into this modern world that we live, right? And that is what I'm always asking every day. Like, what are we doing that we can really connect back into how our ancestors once did it, but without potentially like missing out on life, or the kids, missing out on things? How can we like integrate and embody a way that still feels aligned and within our values of our family, but the kids aren't essentially like missing out? And when I went through my spiritual journey, and back, just like really, and I'm not talking about like, religion or God or anything, more just back to a place of like knowing that, like I'm but I am essentially like a light being, a soul in this human body, having this human experience, and like things that are happening are not happening for me. They're happening for me to really like have this, growth and expansion of my mind and my awareness, and what life is really about, like what is this purpose on this planet? Like, what are we really doing here? And I went through such a confusing time of like, what is the point to all this? Like, what is the point to all of this? And now I've come out of that and just come to a place of like conscious awareness and of everything I do. And not to a point of obsession, but like, if that doesn't feel aligned for me, then why am I doing it? Like, and consciously making a choice to change that, and not just going with the, not the flow, but going with how the rest of society are doing it. Like, I've always been a little bit different in that way, and not kind of, always questioned. I've always was that kid up the front going, but why? But why? And then why again?
Why am I learning algebra, and when am I going to use it? Otherwise, I'm not going to
Yeah.
listen to it. Give me a good answer. I'm not going to listen. I can resignate. That's why I spent most of the time in the office in the principal.
Yeah.
Always the naughty kid, but it was like, no, I was just choosing my time wisely, who I was choosing to learn from.
I love that.
Yeah. So, what are you doing to serve the community now, Jess?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, like my little family unit is like at the forefront of everything I do. And that is like, because, you know, as we know, kids are only little for such short time, and I'm just here to love and nurture on them first and foremost. And then outside of that, well, actually, even before that, even before I love and nurture the children, I actually love and nurture myself. And I make sure that I have, you know, a really beautifully attuned circadian rhythm. And I'm a grounded parent and a grounded person and a grounded mother and a grounded wife. Then it's me, and then it's the kids, a loving, nurturing home, feeding them good food, you know, like setting up our organic gardens, all that sort of thing. And then comes the sharing to the wider community. I've done many things over the last few years. I've done lots of podcasts. I've shared through, you know, in person and online events. I now share like through my Instagram. Oh, and I do my rhythm reset for kids, which is actually turning into the rhythm reset for families. And I offer that twice a year. And I love that because I get to connect with people all around the world. And that is just really special. And I learn so much during those courses too. So that the next one is coming up in April of this year, of 2025. And then the following one, it's always on the equinox. So the first one will be on the autumn equinox for Australia, for the Southern Hemisphere. And the next course will be on the spring equinox
I love that.
for Australia.
I love that.
Yeah, it's very intentional. The dates are very intentional. And it's all to do to align with the seasons. I also talk a lot about daylight savings and how to align your child's rhythm coming to daylight savings. I know it doesn't affect us here in Western Australia, but it does for many other states in Australia. And I get a lot of questions around that time of the year when the daylight savings changes an hour back and an hour forward. And it really messes with the kids' circadian rhythm, right? So I talk a lot about that. And then I just love, it brings me so much joy seeing a mother who is so at her wit's end with her kids who are, you know, not sleeping. Because they're not sleeping, they have behavioral issues, the links to ADHD, I mean, there's so many. I could rattle off so many, like, you know, a kid who's just in complete, like, never being able to concentrate, can't even sit down and create, or not using their imaginations. And then you just see these kids be pulled back into like who they are here to be. And that is little beings who are learning the world through play, being outside, using their imaginations and connecting back in with nature. And that is just like, that's it for me. Like, I'm done. I've served my purpose in this world. And I had, I think we had about 40 families go through it last year. So I'm just starting to put that out again for this year. And it's just, I just love that. It just really brings me joy. So doing that and then just sharing through podcasts is like, that feels like a really beautiful balance at the moment.
So where can people find you?
Circadian.kids on Instagram. That's pretty much the main place I hang out.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I have learned so much, and I could really listen to you speak all day. You're such a good speaker. I could really, and there's so many other, I feel like there's so many topics that we could really dive into, that we could really speak into forever.
Part two coming.
We'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming on. I will get all of the information of your next offerings from you after this, put them in the show notes so people can go in, come find you, and do your courses, because I have done your 3-day rhythm reset. Is that the one I've done?
Yes.
Yeah. And that was just incredible.
Thank you.
And actually, I'll quickly share. So when I had Sage was born at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and she, I think the first 2 nights, I don't want to say she was awake all night, because she was, but she wasn't. But she was definitely awake more so at night than she was in the day. Then she slept all day the first few days, and I ended up putting on Instagram, and you reached out to me and you're like, get her outside in the sunrise and the sunset, and I did for 2 days. And from that moment, I hate boasting about how good of a sleeper she is because
Oh, I love this.
I don't want, I hate thinking about the mums listening being like, oh my God, my
Yes.
kid's not sleeping. But she is an amazing sleeper. And from that point
Wow.
forwards, I've only had to wake up once,
Oh,
maybe
wow.
two times. Like she's an amazing sleeper. Yeah, sleeps right through. But I definitely put it back to that witnessing the sunrise and sunset. And she would have had that when she was
Mm,
in my belly as well because I was,
yes.
yeah, getting out every morning. And I'm actually now realizing that once I did that course, I was getting Ziggy out, and we've actually forgotten and not been doing it lately, and I can see
Mm,
the difference in her sleeping at the moment because Ziggy
yes. Yeah,
still,
it comes in flows and stages, and
yeah,
it's just a remembering, oh, that's right. Like that was really working. Let's do that
yeah. So
again.
I just want to quickly summarize in as quick as possible my learnings. So lights basically should stay off in your home. And at night, when the sun sets, keeping lights off in the home. So, what probably lighting candles, putting on your amber
Mm,
lights, putting on the red lights, as opposed to putting on the blue lights to make sure that we're not waking ourselves back up when we're allowing our body to naturally go to sleep. Summarizing some things I learned from you in the course as well.
mm.
Ensuring that we don't have flicker lights, especially in our kids' bedrooms. Um, if if you see the sunrise and the sunset in yourself when you're pregnant, that's going to start it. Obviously, when your kids, the younger they are, exposing them to the sunrise and sunset, that's also going to set them up for a really good sleep routine, sleep training. It's like your own natural way of sleep training. And then the other thing was food.
Mm,
So eating the food that's grown in your area, well, as close to your area as possible, what's in season for you, as opposed to that other eating out food that's not in season, like from the US, that's imported because the sunlight is affecting and da 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 da.
yeah.
And sunglasses, being mindful of it all in moderation, right? Like I haven't worn
Mm,
sunglasses in years, but you best bet if I'm going out for a Sunday session with my friends, which is once a year at the moment, I'm going to pull out a fancy pair of sunglasses and I'm going to take them to go to my outfit. And
yeah, why not, right?
I'm absolutely fine with that. Yeah. And you can train your skin to uh, not burn as easily from seeing the sun in small increments at morning and afternoon.
Yes, morning and afternoon, mostly the morning.
Awesome. Cool. That's amazing. I've learned so much. Thank you so much for your time. I'll add everything down below for everyone else that wants to check out Jess. I'll add it there. And we'll wrap that one up. Thank you, Jess, so much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Ev. It's been so fun.